Ladies and gents, boys and girls, what's going on? Wednesday, September the 27th, 2023. Hope you're all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. Do apologize. We are a little bit late here on this Wednesday. Told you guys we'd start at 1 o'clock. It is 1:15. Hanging out with our friend Chris Lee over at Southeastern 14. Got the opportunity to talk all things SEC and, of course, Gamecocks and Vols on Saturday. Appreciate Chris Lee having us. Had a really, really fun conversation, which I highly suggest you all check out. And we'll be having Chris Lee on our show here very, very soon. But again, we are rocking. We are live now. I see you all in the chat. We're patiently waiting. Bo Daddy, Brendan, John Edward, Bruin Nation, Chase Floyd, Jacob, Peyton, Sir Big Cock. What a username. Some others, Justin Bryant, Travis Allen as well, Travie, Ethan, appreciate you all tuning in. Also, those in the Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel. The TDC Questions channel, to be sure your questions are answered there. Again, guys, we were supposed to go till 1 o'clock on SEC Daily on Southeastern 14. Went a little bit long, and normally we have our good friend JC Shurburtt of Inside the Gamecocks at 1 o'clock. He will join us now at 2 o'clock. Normally joins us at 1:15. He will join us at 2 o'clock today. So we're moving some things around, right? We've got a jam-packed show for you all here on this Wednesday as we're really getting into the weeds and breaking everything down with this weekend's game. Gamecocks and the Tennessee Volunteers will do battle under the lights at Neyland Stadium. We dive into our position unit comparison. I'll talk key matchups as well, and we'll do our weekly drive around the SEC and look at all of the action the SEC has to offer this weekend, and I'll give my brief thoughts on each of the games. A really fun slate of SEC football is ahead. Guys, with that being said, we got a lot to get into, so let's go ahead and dive into it. Our weekly position unit comparison. Who has the advantage at each position unit when the Gamecocks and Volunteers do battle? And when you get into games like this, right, these 50-50 SEC games, these true toss-up games, that's when these position unit comparisons become a lot of fun, right? Because it's almost dead even going down. And when you look at who has the advantage, who has how many logos on the graphic or what have you, how many pushes are there, it is very comparable. So either way, we get into it, our position unit comparison for Gamecocks and Volunteers in a massive SEC contest at Neyland Stadium. And we start at the quarterback position. And, of course, this was one of the biggest storylines for the Volunteers heading in the 2023 season. Would Joe Milton be able to fill the shoes of the departed Hendon Hooker? And Hendon Hooker, guys, he was not just good last year. He was great. The guy had a historically good season. And I know that South Carolina made him look mortal. Obviously, he went down in that game, unfortunately, with an injury. But Hendon Hooker was fantastic. And I'll tell you guys this, too. It's a damn shame that he was not invited to New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony, because certainly I thought he was deserving, one of the best players in college football last season. And you look at Joe Milton's numbers, 80 for 128, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception, 925 yards, 63% completion percentage, 231 yards per game. So you hear those numbers, and it's not like Joe Milton's played terribly, right? It's not like Joe Milton has just been losing them games and he's been abysmal and there's some major quarterback controversy in Knoxville. But I think the angst and the gripes that you're hearing from Tennessee people, it more has to do with the missed opportunities in the passing game than anything. I think it more so has to do with Joe Milton not having the accuracy that a Hendon Hooker has, right? Missing on some throws, that the opportunity is there to make the completion or hit the big play or what have you. And for whatever reason, those plays just are not there for Tennessee this year, whether it's an error from Joe Milton, whether it's a drop from a wide receiver, so on and so forth. So I think Joe Milton has been solid. I think he's probably been better than Tennessee fans or maybe some others out there want to give credit for. But I don't have any problems with the way Joe Milton has played for Tennessee, and I don't think there's any quarterback controversy. Again, 8 touchdowns, 1 pick, almost 1,000 yards, 63% completion percentage. He could be a lot better, but could also be a lot worse. I think he's done a fine job at center. But then you compare him to Spencer Rattler and what Spencer Rattler has done to this point in the season. And guys, South Carolina doesn't just get the nod when it comes to the quarterback position when you go head-to-head against the Volunteers. Guys, there's not a quarterback in the SEC that's playing better than Spencer Rattler is right now. And so it more so has to do with, Joe Milton hadn't been terrible, but when you're playing the way that Spencer Rattler is, putting his team on his back practically, making every big throw, not putting the football in harm's way. I think something, too, guys, that we have not talked about a lot that Spencer Rattler's doing a great job of. Have you guys noticed that he is working much more effectively in the pocket and getting outside the pocket, using his legs much more effectively than he did a season ago? Like, even with a porous offensive line, I think Spencer Rattler, I've noticed it most against Georgia and Mississippi State. He is doing a great job of extending drives, making plays with his feet. Like, I don't think anybody's ever going to call Spencer Rattler fast, but he's been quick and elusive and kept drives alive for South Carolina. And, he's a guy that when he runs, he doesn't run to run. He runs to throw. He's looking down the field while on the move, looking for the open guy, and is able to make an accurate throw on the run. That makes him so lethal as well. So I give the Gamecocks the nod at quarterback, guys, obviously. And it's not because Joe Milton is terrible or, obviously he's not what Hendon Hooker is. And I think anybody who expected that was setting themselves up for heartache. But it's simply the fact that there's no quarterback in the SEC that is playing on the level of Spencer Rattler right now. So Gamecocks get the nod at the quarterback position. We move to running back. And hey, South Carolina might have a running game, right? With Mario Anderson, I think he absolutely appears to be the answer for the Gamecocks with the game he had last week. And guys, I think that's how you know that the bar is in hell, when we are ranting and raving over a guy and his rushing yard performance. And Mario Anderson, guys, to be fair, didn't even rush for 100 yards. Didn't even hit 4 yards per carry. But the rushing attack has been so porous that felt like a monumental win. But in all seriousness, there are major reasons to be encouraged by what Mario Anderson did, the physicality he provides, the edge, and I think the swagger that he runs with, and a guy who you can tell has played the running back position before, has been an RB1, has carried the load for a football team. And so, that gives you signs of encouragement. Now, beyond Mario Anderson, is Dakereon Joyner your RB2? Does Juju McDowell get action for the first time since Furman? And does Dontavius Braswell see the field at all? There are still major question marks in that South Carolina rushing attack. And then you look at Tennessee. They've got a bit of a three-headed monster back there with Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, and then this guy, Dylan Sampson, who I feel like just emerged out of nowhere, right? Tennessee, guys, is one of the best in college football at running the football. There's this common misconception that Josh Heupel, he wants to throw it 50 or 60 times a game and air it out, throw for 5. They love to run the ball, guys. Love to run the football, right? They're actually one of the few teams, they may be the only team in the SEC that is averaging more yards per play running the ball than they are passing the ball. So that'll tell you something, just how good they've been in the rushing attack. So when it comes to the running backs, guys, I give Tennessee the nod here easily. I like what South Carolina is doing right now with Mario Anderson. I'm very encouraged by what he can bring to the rushing attack. But still, it's Mario Anderson now, and who else, right? How do you feel about Dakereon Joyner still getting 10 to 15 carries in a game? Juju McDowell hadn't touched the ball in weeks. Meanwhile, for Tennessee, they have 3 dudes, and 2 of those 3 are proven, right? Have done it at a high level, rushed for over 1,000 yards last year. Wright and Small are a really good combo. Their top 3 ball carriers averaging, guys, 6.9, 6.1, and 7.4 yards per carry, right? So that's what it's going to come down to when it comes to stopping the ball, slowing them down. And certainly because of that 3-headed monster, Tennessee has the advantage when it comes to the running back position. We move to wide receiver. And if I would have told you that this was one that I had to sit and think about, if I'd have told you before the season that there would be no Juice Wells, yet this was still one that I had to sit and think about it, you probably would have thought I was crazy. How could the Gamecocks receivers match up to Tennessee's wide receivers when there's no Juice Wells involved? Well, guys, let me introduce you to, not that you need an introduction, you know who he is, a man named Xavier Legette, right? And this is the way that I look at this, because you look at Tennessee, Ramel Keaton, Brew McCoy, Squirrel White, McCullen Castles. They got some dudes. Tennessee's got some weapons, no doubt. Has there been a dude that's really replaced the production that a Jalen Hyatt had? Not necessarily, but I think that anybody who expected that were, again, setting themselves up for heartache. Their leading receiver, Ramel Keaton, 12 catches for 205, 3 touchdowns on the year. You then go McCoy, 15 for 196, Squirrel White, 17 for 172. So they are really dispersing the football, right? Like a number of different guys are touching the football. But when you look at the South Carolina side, guys, when you have not just the best wide receiver in the SEC, but the best wide receiver in college football right now on your roster, it's going to help boost your unit. Now, the question for me still remains, what do you get out of the rest of the room? Is it Omega Blake? Is it Amarian Brown coming back from injury? Is it Eddie Lewis? Is it Nicholas Harbor getting some increased reps? Is it somebody else, right? So while I think there's more depth in the Tennessee wide receiver room, admittedly, of quality bodies, when you have a guy like Xavier Legette, the best receiver in college football right now, and you still have a number of guys who are quality, maybe not to the level of Tennessee, but are still quality. Like I like Omega Blake's game a lot right now. I like what Eddie Lewis has shown. If Nick Harbor ever gets the opportunities, touches the football, what have you, he's going to burst on the scene. I give South Carolina the advantage at the wide receiver position. I like Tennessee's receivers, but again, when you have Xavier Legette, when you've got the best wide receiver on the field, that goes a long way in giving you the nod when it comes to a position unit comparison, if you will. So Gamecocks with the advantage at wide receiver. Guys, we go to the tight end position. And the tight ends for Tennessee is, again, something that has been a bit of a mystery. They have not gotten nearly the production out of the tight end position that they got a season ago. Jacob Warren, the redshirt senior, a guy who has very comparable stats, actually, to a Trey Knox. Off to somewhat of a slow start this year. I mean, you look at his numbers, guys, 4 catches for just 28 yards. He does have a touchdown on the season, and you look back at his numbers, he's around a 200 or 300 yards per season kind of guy. Not really a game-changing tight end, right? He's not a Hayden Hurst out there, or a Jason Witten for the Tennessee folks, but he's a solid tight end at 6'6", 253, also a really good blocking tight end as well. You love to see Trey Knox for South Carolina get involved last week, finally with a touchdown catch. Without a doubt, his best game as a Gamecock. I don't think we've really seen the emergence of Joshua Simon to this point, at least to the level that folks thought he was going to be. I'm going with a push at the tight end position. I think Warren and Knox are very comparable. And I think besides those two, both these teams have question marks. I think there's probably more upside and more high-end potential on the South Carolina side than there is the Tennessee side, although I say that, and Tennessee's got some young, high-flying freshmen that they are really, really excited about. But all in all, guys, I don't really feel confident giving one side or the other the nod here. So I am going to go with the push. It'll be interesting to see which team is most able to use its tight ends, because for South Carolina, and both teams are going to pass the football, right? For the Gamecocks, Trey Knox, is he able to build off of that game against Mississippi State and continue to eliminate the drops? I think that's the thing that's hurt him the most at this point. And then for Tennessee, getting Jacob Warren more involved and helping out those wide receivers. I mean, this is a guy that had 0 catches against Florida. So all of his production has come against, we'll say, lesser than competition. I mean, Virginia's Power 5, but they might as well not be. So the push at tight end for both the Gamecocks and Tennessee. We move to the offensive line. And guys, South Carolina's offensive line, give them credit. They've made some major, major strides ever since changes were implemented to go with youth over experience, right? The additions of Big Tree Babalade, Trovon Bowe, Jatavius Shiver, some of these other guys, I mean, it has done wonders on the Gamecocks offensive line. And when you think about what this line was against North Carolina and even Furman, guys, for the most part, but the strides that this group has taken since then, it's commendable. And you've really got to tip your cap to Lonnie Teasley and Shane Beamer and Dabble Loggins and that entire coaching staff. They even said this week, guys, in their media availabilities, they feel like they found the starting 5. They found their 5 best guys, and that, they've got some wiggle room beyond that, but they feel as if they are confident in these 5 guys. And it really speaks volumes at the fact that, a guy like Big Tree Babalade, 1, maybe even 2 freshmen at times with Trovon Bowe, are part of that starting lineup, right? It really speaks to what you had coming in the season, the fact these young guys, these true freshmen, were able to take over. All that being said, guys, you look at Tennessee right now, the way they're running the football, 229.5 yards per game. They are averaging 6.2 yards per carry. I understand the competition they've played. I totally get that. But 3 of 5 offensive linemen returned from last year. Obviously, they're having to replace Darnell Wright and Jerome Carvin were huge. Those were huge losses. They did pick up John Campbell Jr. from Miami in the portal and Andre Karik out of Texas. And you look at the offensive line for Tennessee. It's not perfect by any means, but they've done such a great job of getting a run push and establishing the run. And I think even protecting Joe Milton. The Florida game was less than stellar, but all in all, as a whole, I look at these two offensive lines and I still trust Tennessee's more right now than I do South Carolina's, just because of the fact that you have these youngsters, you have these true freshmen. And guys, even in the win against Mississippi State, you surrendered 4 sacks. So I think this offensive line has taken steps forward. I think they're making progress, but I think they still are a work in progress. Meanwhile, Tennessee with a veteran group on the offensive front that is getting a major push, especially in the rushing attack. For that reason, I give the nod to Tennessee when it comes to the big uglies up front. We move to the other side of the football now, the defensive line. And this is one that caused somewhat of a stir on social media this morning. Vols lost their top pass rusher, Byron Young. They did return to Omari Thomas, DeJohn Terry. Guys, a really good front seven. Call it for what it is. Tennessee's defensive front has done a great job of getting after the quarterback. Their linebacker play as well. I've been impressed by South Carolina over the last couple of weeks. I've been impressed by the Gamecocks against Georgia and Mississippi State. You look right now, guys, we've all got our gripes and our complaints when it comes to the defense. And the secondary, we'll get there in a second, has not been good. They have not lived up to the standard. But getting lost in that shuffle, guys, South Carolina is quietly defending the run as well as they have in years. I mean, we all clamored for a better rushing defense. South Carolina's top half of the league right now. If you would have told me that the Gamecocks would be top half of the league in rushing defense, I probably would have told you were crazy. Honestly, I just did not believe it. I did not see it, especially after that first week of the season, right? Tonka Hemingway, Boogie Huntley. I think Jordan Strawn coming back into form last week was huge for this group. If you can get JT Gear back, that's going to be big. I think Drew Tuazama has been a nice addition from UAB. Oh, by the way, let's not forget TJ Sanders, who's playing at a really high level. This one was tough for me. You mentioned you go back to Tennessee, man, and the guys they have up front, and Tyler Barron, another great one, 6'5", 260 pounds, guys. He has been unstoppable up front. Already has 4 sacks on the season. I'm going with a push here. Here's the reason why. The competition is who it is. Tennessee can only play who's on their schedule, and so they've had success against those opponents. And the Volunteers have registered, guys, 16 sacks on this season. Or I believe it's 17. 16 or 17 sacks. Either way, they've registered a ton of sacks. Lead the SEC in sacks. And they've obviously done a great job stopping the run. The reason I go push here is this. You put Tennessee's defensive front against that schedule South Carolina has faced, I think the numbers are very similar. Now, are the passing yards per game numbers different? I don't know. We can have that debate till we're blue in the face. But I think the rushing yards per game total, I think the sack numbers, I think they're very similar. Like, who you play, it does matter, guys. It does matter when you're talking about these teams and the numbers they've put up in statistics. So I'm going push on the defensive front because what I've seen Tennessee dominate lesser than. But I've seen South Carolina take major steps forward against competent competition, against SEC competition. And the one SEC game that Tennessee played in was Florida. And that defensive front got pushed around all night long. So, what is Tennessee up front? What is that defensive line? Because in one game against competition that actually matters, they got bullied. They got bullied flat out. So, I'm going with a push because, number one, I'm still unsure what Tennessee is. And number two, South Carolina has taken major strides in my mind. We move to the linebacker position. And this is one, guys. You've seen South Carolina at linebacker. Some improvements with guys like Stone Blanton, Debo Williams. You're seeing some more Bam Martin Scott. Pup Howard is getting more comfortable. You look at the Tennessee linebackers, and they are led, guys, by one of the best in the SEC, and Aaron Beasley, a guy who has 29 tackles to his credit, 7.5 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks on the season. He was their leading tackler a season ago with 76. They also added BYU transfer Keenan Pill out of the transfer portal, and he has been solid to this point. Tennessee's done a great job stopping the run, guys. They've done a great job of getting after the quarterback. It has not just been the defensive front. Their linebacker play has been really, really, really active as well. And when you have a guy like Aaron Beasley leading the way, I like Debo Williams a lot, guys. I think Stone Blanton is coming along slowly but surely. I think he's coming along. I think quality depth is still a concern at the linebacker position for South Carolina. I think Tennessee has got more of that quality depth. And again, when you're led by a guy, like I just mentioned, like an Aaron Beasley, it helps out tremendously. Also, you look at linebacker guys, Elijah Herring, the second leading tackler for Tennessee, 24 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, to his credit because of that duo, because of more depth. I am giving Tennessee the nod when it comes to the linebacker position. We move to defensive back. The question is this when it comes to this. Do you believe that South Carolina is as bad as what we saw last week? That's the question. Do you believe they're actually 317 yards per game allowed bad? Are they 487 yards allowed to Will Rogers bad? Or do you think it was a one-off? Do you think it was a blip on the radar? I think I fall somewhere in the middle. I have concerns about the Gamecocks secondary, no doubt, but I don't think you're going to see them give up 500 yards passing per game. I think you're going to see the 317 yard per game total come down because admittedly, guys, South Carolina has played some of the best quarterbacks they're going to see on this year's schedule. You then look at the Tennessee side of things, guys, and obviously the secondary was a major issue for them last year, right? We all saw what Spencer Rattler and company did to that secondary in Columbia. Thus far, they're allowing just 190 yards per game through the air. They've only allowed 4 passing touchdowns and 5.87 yards per completion. They've also snagged 3 interceptions. Pretty good numbers. Pretty good numbers. And I thought they did a pretty good job of limiting Graham Mertz. I thought you saw some holes in that secondary, but for the most part, it was the rushing attack that gave Tennessee all those fits, not Graham Mertz and that downfield passing game. With that being said, are those numbers because Tennessee is some juggernaut in the secondary this year? They've made great strides in the secondary. And, you know, guys, this is a pass defense last year that finished 127th nationally. And the entire group came back. The entire group returned. Tamarian McDonald, Jalen McCullough, those are guys who give you a lot of experience or give Tennessee a lot of experience in the back end of the defense as well. They've been solid to this point. How good is Tennessee's secondary? We'll start to find out this weekend. Is South Carolina's secondary quite as bad as what we saw against Mississippi State? I don't think so, but it's not as good as it's been in years past. There's just worlds of uncertainty when it comes to these two groups, because I'm not convinced Tennessee's as good as they've shown, And while South Carolina isn't as bad, I think, as they showed last week, like, they still have major problems and major issues. And I think the pass defense is probably something that's going to continue to give them problems throughout the year. So, for those reasons, I'm going with a push at the defensive back spot. I'm going with a push here, guys. I think both of these units are comparable. I think at season's end, the statistics will be very comparable as well. And I don't really feel comfortable giving either side the nod here. So we're going to go push with the defensive backs. At kicker and punter. Now, this one's interesting. This one's interesting, right? Because South Carolina, admittedly, Beamer ball has not been what we're accustomed to seeing at this point in the year. I mean, you know it's bad when fans are complaining that Kai Kroger is having an off year. He's off. What's wrong with Kai Kroger? Is he okay? What's going on with Kai Kroger? Right? You know things are in disarray when Gamecock fans are, complaining about their punter, if you will. You look at Tennessee, though, guys, had to replace both specialists from a season ago. So they came into this season with some question marks. You look at their totals. Jackson Ross is their punter, averaging 40.94 yards per punt, 52 for the long, 350-plus yard punts. And then Charles Campbell, their field goal kicker, 5 for 6 on field goals, 83%, 3 for 3, 20-29, 1 for 1, 30-39, and 1 for 1, 40-49. His one miss came outside of 50 yards. His long this year is 42. So, when it comes to kicker and punter, guys, I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm going to give the Gamecocks the nod here. But if we continue to see Kai Kroger and Mitch Jeter and just special teams as a whole not be what we're accustomed to seeing, I think this starts to become a conversation of maybe South Carolina doesn't get the nod. No-brainer, get the nod on a week-in, week-out basis. All of a sudden, South Carolina's kickers and punters look kind of mortal. They look kind of normal, right? They don't look like the Beamer ball to the moon that we've seen over the last couple of years. I'm not telling you I'm there yet, but it's something to keep an eye on. It's absolutely something to keep an eye on. And finally, guys, this one will be fun. Who has the advantage in regards to coaching? Now, Shane Beamer and Josh Heupel enter this game tied 1-1 in head-on-head matchups. And this game is going to go a long way in determining how these two coaches are viewed. And more importantly, how their programs are viewed, right? Josh Heupel got the better of Shane Beamer in year one with a blowout, and I mean a blowout victory at Neyland Stadium. Of course, South Carolina, Shane Beamer returned the favor at Williams-Brice Stadium a season ago. And so now that's one of the biggest storylines going in this game, right? Two programs on similar trajectories, you could argue. Two coaches on similar trajectories. You look at what Tennessee did a season ago with Josh Heupel at the helm, taking Hendon Hooker and Jalen Hyatt and what they did. And I know the Gamecocks beat them, guys. I get that. Everybody's going to bring it to head-to-head. I understand. But the fact of the matter is Tennessee had the best season they had and God knows how long, went to the Orange Bowl and won the Orange Bowl over Clemson. When you look at the rest of the Tennessee coaching staff, right, because this isn't just head coaches. That's a big factor in it, but it's the entire coaching staff. We've been very impressed with Davil Loggins at this point. Done a great job. I mean, freeing up Spencer Rattler and allowing him to play free and fast and at a high level. He's done a great job. But he's only 4 games in. Clayton White, half the fan base wants Clayton White fired, right? So what is he really at DC? And then Pete Limbo, fantastic special teams coach. You look at this Tennessee coaching staff. Their offensive coordinator is Joey Hales. I believe that's how you say his name. Joey Hales, Halsey, whatever. He is the quarterbacks and offensive coordinator coach. Okay? Spent time at UCF with Josh Heupel. has spent time at Tennessee coaching quarterbacks, spent time at Oklahoma, spent time at Utah State, at Missouri. So this is a dude that has followed Josh Heupel around. And so everywhere that Josh Heupel's gone, the offenses have been really good. He's been right there with him as his sidekick. And we all know that Josh Heupel's the guy behind the offense, but he's got his right-hand man there who's got a number of years of experience. You then look at Tim Banks, the defensive coordinator. One of the best in the business, guys. 16 years of defensive coordinator experience at the FBS level. Spent time at Penn State, spent time at Illinois, Cincinnati. He was at Maryland. He was at Central Michigan. This dude has a long, long resume when it comes to coaching defense and coaching defense at a high level. Now, granted, last year, they were suspect. Finished the season strong, beating Clemson the way they did it. Give them credit. They were suspect, though. And then their special teams coach, I don't even know if they have him listed here. I don't even see him. Okay, no love for special teams, I guess, from Tennessee. Here we go. Mike Eckler, never mind. He's the outside linebackers and special teams coordinator, excuse me. Either way, when you look at coaching, this game will determine a lot in regards to, and a lot of people say, Chris, because I'm giving Tennessee the nod here when it comes to coaching. Let me go ahead and throw that out there. Now you understand more context of the conversation. People say, Chris, why aren't you going with a push here? These coaches are tied 1-1 in record. Why aren't you going with a push? Let me explain why. You got more experience at OC. Whether the guy was an OC or not, he's been following Josh Heupel around. Josh Heupel is his own offensive coordinator, by the way. And the offense, spoiler, has been good everywhere he's been. Tim Banks, longer tenured DC at the FBS level. And guys, South Carolina's got a DC right now that folks want gone. A lot of them do, at least. Pete Limbo, hey, no arguments here. He's the best special teams coordinator in all of college football. When you look at the two head coaches specifically, because a lot of weight falls on how we grade the head coach, right? The reason Josh Heupel gets the nod for me over Shane Beamer. Love Shane Beamer. But Shane Beamer, third year on the job. We still don't really know, guys, what Shane Beamer is going to be when he comes into his own and matures as a head coach. And at some point, right, the book is written on you. Like for Josh Heupel, good offense. You know what you're getting. He's won everywhere he's been. Shane Beamer is laying the building blocks right now. Shane Beamer's a great coach, guys. Shane Beamer's a master motivator. Shane Beamer has been able to squeeze blood out of a rock and get the most out of his football teams. Josh Heupel's one of the best offensive minds in college football. Therefore, one of the best coaches in college football. I lean Tennessee and giving them a nod because of the experience and admittedly, guys, yes, South Carolina beat Tennessee last year. But are you telling me that Gamecock Nation isn't envious of what's happened at Tennessee? Josh Heupel took over a situation, you could argue, worse than South Carolina, and in 2 years, they're beating Alabama. They're winning 11 games. That hasn't quite happened at South Carolina, right? A lot of folks have looked over and said, why is Tennessee having all this success, but South Carolina isn't? Now, again, Saturday's game is going to go a long way in this conversation because, hey, you have a losing record to a guy. It's hard to justify you're a better coach than him or that you should be thought of as one of the best coaches in college football, but you can't beat this one guy, right? Or that guy should be thought of below you. That's a conversation to have for sure. But right now, because of what Josh Heupel has done in such a short time at Tennessee, not just winning, but winning big. I'm talking New Year's Six Bowl. I'm talking winning a New Year's Six Bowl. Because of what they've been able to do in the transfer portal, winning in the portal, Shane Beamer got Spencer Rattler and Juice Wells, but it's been a real mixed bag since then. The transfer portal has hurt Carolina just as much as it's helped. So right now, because of those things, the experience, the early success at Tennessee, the overall track record of not just Heupel, but his entire coaching staff, I give Tennessee the slight edge. Slight is the key word, but the slight edge at coaching over South Carolina. That being said, It's a major storyline on Saturday because the winner of this game, it'll go a long way in determining which one of these coaches and which one of these programs has the leg up moving forward. Guys, that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our first break of the day on the other side. We're going to get our good friend J.C. Shurburtt of Inside the Gamecocks on the show to talk all things Gamecocks, SEC, everything in between. All that and more on the other side of this break. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose, while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
That's your Dougie, ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we're back here on this Wednesday, September the 27th, 2023. Very excited to chat with our good friend JC Shurburtt of Inside the Gamecocks here on this Wednesday. He's upcoming any minute now, so you guys stay tuned. Again, yes, spur your enthusiasm asked. We did start late today. I went on SEC Daily. The guys over at Southeastern 14 had me on the show. Had a great time talking SEC, Gamecocks, everything in between, guys. A jam-packed slate this weekend. What really feels like kind of a separation Saturday, really. Like in the sense of, we're all talking about right now, we're having real trouble identifying, what team should be fourth or what team should be sixth or what team should be ninth, or like games like these that we have this weekend are really going to help us decipher, right, who's for real and who isn't. I mean, really, truly at the end of the day. So really excited for it. Games like Tennessee, South Carolina, Florida, Kentucky, Ole Miss, LSU. The list just goes on and on and on of great games this weekend, truly. Let's see. Kai Kroger, one of 201 semifinalists for the Campbell, the academic Heisman. Congratulations, Kai Kroger. Let's see. Clayton White says, can't look at Mississippi State as one bad night and brush it under the rug. He says it starts with him, and they're working to make sure it won't happen again. So take it for what it's worth, folks. Take it for what it's worth. Take it for what it's worth. Either way, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Yeah, Bubba, how are Leggett or Rattler not in the Heisman talk? That's a great question. I mean, I can tell you why, because the Heisman Trophy and the way it's voted on and the way it's discussed, it's more of a popularity contest. And I mean, if your team's not ranked in the top 10 and what have you, like there's a lot of politics that go into it. But again, I would go back to the simple argument that nobody is doing more for their team and playing at a higher level right now than Spencer Rattler. And I mean, Xavier Leggett, numbers will literally tell you he's the best wide receiver in all of college football. I don't think there's really an argument there. Again, guys, with that being said, I think he's ready. We're going to go ahead and bring him in. He joins us every single week, and we appreciate him being flexible with his time. Our good friend, JC Shurburtt of Inside the Gamecocks of the Big Spur. He joins us. JC, what's going on, my man? It's great to see you once again. How are you?
Yeah, great to be with you, Chris, here from Studio South in Columbia. Great to be in town. Great win for the Gamecocks Saturday night. Just a lot of great feelings, great stuff happening this week on the home front here. So under the weather yesterday, pretty bad, and so I'm glad that you were able to reschedule me, and I feel much better today. Thanks.
Yeah, JC, glad to hear that, man, and glad to see that you're feeling better and everything. Let's start with the Mississippi State game, JC, because we're going to get into specifics, obviously, because I want to hear your thoughts and opinions on how the game went. But would you agree with, because my sentiment is this, like, style points, the days of that, they don't really matter anymore. Like, it's just about winning games in the SEC with the parity and like everybody's just beating up on everybody. And it doesn't feel like there's quote unquote one true or two or three true dominant teams, right? Like, you'd love to go out there and flex your muscles and win by 17 or win by 21 or have a game like Tennessee. But it kind of feels like to me, JC, like, because I think a lot of fans are not a lot, but some fans, I thought, from what I could tell on social media, maybe we're disappointed in the fact that South Carolina only won by 7. They looked at lowly Mississippi State. And I know they're in transition. They're not all that great. The numbers suggested that coming in. But, like, I just don't think this year especially, I mean, this has always been the case, there's just no such thing as a bad win in the SEC when you can get beat on any given Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, there never is really, especially – when you look back on this season, you'd much rather win a game like that than lose. And that's exactly what can happen sometimes to teams that are favored and at home and all that. Is the game is just that game Saturday night was so weird. Like nobody had Will Rogers throwing for 500 yards on their bingo card and Carolina holding Mississippi State to 32 rushing yards. I mean, just it was crazy. It was one of those games where I've seen many Carolina teams lose those types of games. I remember in 2004, Carolina was ranked. They had just beaten Alabama on the road. Ole Miss comes to town. It was Cutcliffe's last year there. He got fired after the season. It was his worst team. He comes to town, and they rotate 3 quarterbacks and end up beating the Gamecocks 31-28 and derailing a positive start to that season. So I've seen Carolina lose games like that before. I've seen them win games like that before, obviously. But you're right. A W is a W. I never felt, Chris, personally, like the game was in peril. I thought Carolina, even though the scoreboard was close most of the time, I thought Carolina felt to me like they were in control of the game. I never sat there and went, holy crap, they're going to lose or anything like that. But it was closer. I mean, hats off to Will Rogers and Griffin, their receiver, and those guys. They played hard, obviously. But hey, it was a fun night and a fun win. And you're right. You take them and you move on. And, I think there's going to be a lot of games like this year for this South Carolina football team and for everybody else in the SEC. It's going to be one of those types of years where literally every Saturday is going to be a battle because there is a lot of parity right there, at least in 2 through 13 right now. That we'll see what Georgia ends up being. But it's one of those, like you said, you take it and you move on, and happy for the win.
Mm-hmm. And JC, to your point about the game not being in peril or being in doubt, even when it was 27-27, it was more so one of those things for me where it's just, the advantage of playing at home at night. You just kind of believe that something good is going to happen and that South Carolina, despite maybe what has happened to that point, will find a way to win the football game. You mentioned it's kind of a weird position, JC, I feel like, to be in, because I feel like all we've talked about for the past 15 years is run defense. It just seems like that's all of our conversations about run defense. Can Carolina stop the run? They can't stop the run. And like South Carolina, I feel like right now, especially over the last 2 weeks, the defensive front, I feel like, has been much more active. To your point, what you said, guys are just playing better. Like, there's really no other way to explain it. Jordan Strawn came into his own. You're seeing Boogie Huntley and Tonka Hemingway and TJ Sanders, and these guys really start to, develop. I think Drew Tuizama is doing some nice things out there. But it's the secondary now and the pass defense that's, is sort of giving you some issues. And we knew that it could be some growing pains early with some of these quarterbacks you're playing. And now we're starting to hear some rumblings, some gripes about Clayton White and the defensive staff. What's your thoughts on this defense? Are you worried at all, concerned? Are you encouraged because of the front seven? Like, where do you sit when it comes to this Gamecocks defense?
It needs to get, they need to tighten up a little bit. I think that the passing yardage was very disappointing. Part of it, I think, was, Mississippi State, you got to credit them and their ability to find the favorable matchup. And Griffin on DQ Smith, that's a mismatch. And that's not DQ's strength covering a guy like that man-to-man in the open field. So you had to kind of adjust earlier. Really, they should have probably adjusted earlier on him. I don't think, though, Chris, that we're about to see a secondary that like some in South Carolina history it's about to fall apart. I'm thinking about like the 2020 season with 4 NFL guys on the field, couldn't stop anybody. Teams were torching them through the air. I don't get that sense. I think they're going to make some adjustments. They really did sell out to try to stop the run the other night. That was kind of the focus, and they did. Obviously, you can't give up 500 passing yards in a game and expect to win most of the time. But we've seen Marcellus O'Donnell Fortune, Nick Emenwari, DQ Smith, David Spalding was out there, made a big interception. The younger guys like Judge Collier played pretty well, I thought, for a freshman the other night. The individually, you look and this is still a good secondary. I mean, that wasn't, I think, indicative of what they are going to be for the rest of the year. So while it was weird and disappointing and strange and all that, the progress made against the run, I'll take that and go with it and see what happens moving forward.
Now, switching gears, JC, the offensive side, obviously Spencer Rattler continues to impress. Xavier Legette hitting, 23 miles an hour or so. And, I mean, I think showing a level of speed that maybe we didn't even know he had that gear, and we certainly had not seen yet. I thought it was encouraging that Trey Knox got involved. And, of course, JC, the big one, Mario Anderson emerging as, I think we all feel like RB1. I think the offensive line continues to take steps forward with Big Tree Babalade and Trovon Bowe and the young guys. And you can tell they're starting to gel a little more. I think it was Shane Beamer that actually said that, they feel pretty good about, like, we know our starting five now. Like, we have our five guys, and then we got some others that we're rotating in. Where do you sit right now with this offense? Obviously when you have a quarterback playing like Spencer Rattler, it helps tremendously. I mean, there's no player right now in the SEC at that position. I think JC more locked in than he is. But it feels like Mario Anderson in the running game and finding something in that regard was the biggest storyline from that group leaving that win against Mississippi State.
Absolutely. And kind of like I think I said it here last week and on my show, every player has their strengths, right? And I think with DeCarrion Joyner, his strength really is when they get down inside the 10, inside the 20. He can sniff the end zone well. And he did make a good play on the touchdown that he ran, and he's leading the team in rushing touchdowns. But between the 20s, I think you got to go with Anderson because Anderson is that guy. I mean, even not between the 20s if you want, but he's got a low center of gravity, good balance. He breaks tackles. He's hard to tackle. He's one of those smaller built guys. It's hard to get leverage on. And he's strong as an ox. I mean, for 5'9", 210. And he can, he can get through a hole and get you yardage. I like that about him. And I think that when they were, when he got in the portal, people kind of, why are you taking a kid from Newberry? The coaching staff thought like he was definitely good enough, and the knock on him through spring and fall was that maybe, he's having trouble adjusting to the speed at this level. Well, the more he plays, the more you can tell he's getting there. He's adjusting to it. And a lot of things about running back play come naturally to the good ones. And you can see that natural ability. So, and I like what they're doing with Spencer in the run game right now too. I mean, we don't talk about that yardage a lot because I think everybody kind of holds their breath whenever he takes off running. But man, I mean, he had led the team in rushing at Georgia, and then had some really nice runs against Mississippi State, and he's getting more and more confident in that part of his game. So you saw a little zone read action the other night, like West Virginia in 2007, Pat White, out there. And I think if they can continue to develop that part of the offense as well, those are still rushing yardage. That's still running the football. And I think you can really start, as teams have to start to respect Spencer getting out on the perimeter and running it. Well, then you got to worry about him doing it. So what are you doing there? So you don't have an extra guy in the box now, and Mario has more room to run. So I thought that was maybe an understated part of the game plan and what we saw on offense on Saturday night was that Dowell Loggins being almost sneaky, getting that zone read action going with the quarterback keeper and all that. So I'm encouraged. Obviously, this weekend is going to be a big challenge. It is every weekend in the SEC, but I like where they're at now versus where they were after North Carolina for sure.
Mm-hmm. And JC, you mentioned Spencer Rattler's running ability. That's certainly been one of the things for me as well. That's really impressed me, right? We knew we had the arm talent, but the way that, and it just seems like every great quarterback in South Carolina history, the great ones, they've been able to scramble and keep drives alive. Even if they weren't fast, it just being quick enough to be elusive in the pocket. Spencer Rattler, obviously a guy that runs to throw instead of runs to run. He keeps his eyes downfield, but when he has yardage, he gets it. And it's just like you mentioned, you can't overstate how valuable that is for an offense. You mentioned Dowell Loggins. I know that JC, we're only 4 games in, and there's a lot left to go that'll decide, the way we're kind of speaking about Dowell and the job he's done. But I mean, just stopping for a moment, because I think back to a year ago to this point, like the offensive coordinator was all we could talk about. The fact that we're not talking about it as much is a luxury, right? It's funny how when those guys, when people do their job, you don't quite mention them as much as you do when they're not doing their job. So let's take a moment because we all know Dowell Loggins, was to some a questionable hire. It was, who is this guy? He's got no experience. Is he going to succeed? There are bigger names out there. So far, so good. I mean, your thoughts on the job that Dowell Loggins has done to this point?
Yeah, and look, I think the offense looks system-wise, scheme-wise, looks good. It's creative. It's multiple. It's the route trees and combos are fun. It looks like the kids. Most importantly, the kids know what they're doing. They know the offense amazingly, unlike the last couple of years. So I think it's designed to get the ball in the hands of the playmakers. I mean, that's you saw it. Against Georgia, that opening drive with juice in, how when everybody's healthy, this thing can really be a monster. I mean, because you're boom, boom. I mean, who do you stop? So I thought I think he's done well. I also think there's a lot of talk about play calling, especially when things don't go well offensively. Maybe almost too much, discussion about that, and there's such a focus on it. But you also have to understand part of Dowell Loggins' job also is to coach quarterbacks. And Spencer Rattler is demonstrably better this year than he was last year. I mean, he's just gotten better, and it's you got to credit Coach Loggins for that too, because that's his guy that he works with every single day. So not only is he setting up Spencer in the offense for success, but he's done a great job of getting more out of Rattler as a player and improving his game. And Spencer's probably playing his way up to a relatively high draft pick, and he'll be the first quarterback since Todd Ellis drafted out of this program. So that's something to look forward to as well. So I would say Dowell Loggins it's definitely surpassed my expectations that I had when he was hired. And really, at this point, through 4 games, I'm probably more impressed than I thought I would be as well. So we'll see how the rest of the year goes, but certainly so far so good for him.
JC, as we turn our attention to Saturday, a big one under the lights at Neyland Stadium, Gamecocks taking on the Vols. Obviously, the storylines in this one are endless when you think about Shane Beamer versus Josh Heupel. We've heard, JC, that there's some bad blood there. We actually heard Tennessee guys at SEC Media Day say that there's no coach that Josh Heupel wants to beat more than Shane Beamer. I'm sure that last year and the butt whooping they suffered at Willie B had something to do with that. But you think about that dynamic. You think about the revenge factor. You think about, Tennessee trying to prove their quote-unquote back, if you will. But let's look on the field. Let's stick offensively when South Carolina has the football. Obviously it comes down to Spencer Rattler, Xavier Legette, a Tennessee defensive front that has done a great job getting after the quarterback. South Carolina's offensive line going to have to hold up. And, you'd like to see more of Mario Anderson in the run game and balance. But, when you look at Tennessee defensively, they've taken some strides. I think they're much better than they were last year. The secondary, though, I still have my question marks about, when you look at Tennessee on that side of the football, what challenges do you see and what do you expect from the South Carolina offense and how they should attack that? Because I think you and I both agree and would expect, JC, I think this is going to be a high-scoring game.
I think you got to protect. That's the key. I think if you look at Tennessee's defensive system or scheme, it's complementary. So what it's designed to do is sort of take risks, hit big plays, shut the run down, get the ball back for your offense, that kind of thing. And South Carolina took advantage of that last year, frankly, and attacked them down the field all night. I don't know that Tennessee has not faced a passing offense this season even close to what South Carolina's bringing in. They've struggled against the run to a certain extent. Florida got him for about 172 on the ground. Travis Etienne's brother, Trevor, got that and ran it really well against them. They're a hard team to figure out because I don't think they've played anybody. I mean, Virginia is probably the worst team in Power 5 football. Austin Peay was a struggle. Texas San Antonio was really good last year, but they are not this year. And then Florida, which I don't think has been super duper impressive outside of the Tennessee game, they're Florida. So you just the Vols are one of those teams I just don't know about, because it's hard to tell given their level of competition so far. But I think it's just like last season. You have to protect, and you have to find rushing yardage if you can. But I think obviously that you got to be careful about wanting to play. Florida did a good job of playing keep away and running it all over them. But that's the only team that's the last 2 years that's been successful doing that against Josh Heupel's team. LSU tried to do it last year and got blown out of the water because if you're trying to run it and they're stopping you and they're selling out to do it and you can't hit anything big and match their momentum. They're very much a momentum team. They'll run you out of the building. You got to treat the first 10 minutes of the game like it's the last fourth quarter. Life or death right there. And if you get off to a good start against them, tend to hang and play well. Teams that don't,
Oh, we lost JC there. There we go. We got you back, JC. I don't know what happened. Kicked you out. Tennessee Hackers. My bad.
I feel you. But Gamecocks have to do.
Whoa. All right, third time's a charm. We're going to try this again. I don't know what's going on.
There's a garbage truck outside, too. It's making all kinds of noise. But
technology is great until it isn't. I apologize.
That's all right. And, so I think starting quickly, one of the worst things about 2 years ago up there was Carolina was running the football with Kevin Harris finally for the first time all season. They go all the way down, get all the way down the field, and then back to back. First they put Joyner in there, and everybody in the stadium knew he was going to keep it. If he'd have given it to Lloyd walks in the end zone. That's first down. And then second down, the most notorious play in the history of South Carolina football recently, the Jordan Birch pass. That's why you need to put points on the board against these guys and match their momentum. They're a momentum team, and if you can't match it, it could be a long day. But if you can, you can stay in it. And, like the Gamecocks did last year, you can take the momentum and run with it. So,
JC, what I recall from last year is it was not just a one-man wrecking crew, right? It wasn't just Juice Wells. It wasn't just Josh Fan. It was a number of guys who stepped up in that football game. You have to imagine Tennessee, Tim Banks, their defensive coordinator, are going to do everything they can to limit Xavier Legette. I don't say take away because he's going to get his. Who would you say is that guy you're most that you're expecting or you're looking to that could be that other guy? Or do you think it's one dude? Do you think it's multiple supporting cast pieces? Is it a tight end? Is it a wide receiver? Who's next in line, you think, to kind of start taking some of the pressure off of a Xavier Legette?
I think Trey Knox. I'd like to see more Josh Simon too. I still think he's a really good player. Knox sort of had his best game against Mississippi State. Those two guys are valuable weapons. Omega Blake has played some really good football this year. I like what I see out of Eddie Lewis when he gets in the game. I don't know if Amarian Brown's status has been updated or not, but obviously Amarian's game is his speed. So if the hamstrings bothered him, you got to worry about that. Obviously, this passing offense is very good. I think it's great when Juice Wells is part of it. Because that gets you. That's an offense that's really hard to defend. But other guys have stepped up. I think Xavier, the tight ends, Omega Blake, Eddie Lewis. Heck, maybe you see a guy like Tyshawn Russell come in a big moment and make a play or so. He's getting more and more snaps. Nick Harbor, same way. Maybe it's his time to get out there and do it. I know everybody wants to see it. So that's. That's kind of my take on it. There's enough there. But I guess Marler was on, I saw on your Instagram, said that, it's just, you're just not going to win it just relying on Spencer and Xavier. And I tend to agree with that. I think that, you're going to have some other guys, step up and be, playmakers. And I think there's enough there to do it.
Now, JC, switching sides of the football, when Tennessee has it offensively, and I heard you say this, and this is kind of a popular phrase to throw around, but I want you to really dissect it and dive into it. When you talk about slowing down Tennessee, this Josh Heupel attack, getting the Volunteers off schedule, right? What exactly do you mean when you say that?
Well, you just the down and distance. You want to get them behind the chains if you can. You want to throw incompletions. You don't want them just to dink, 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 dunk, boom. The dink, dink, boom offense. I guess that's what
I still have nightmares from 2021 of that exact thing happening.
You got to get them in. Third and and this isn't Hendon Hooker. This is Joe Milton. So I think you kind of Joe's a really good quarterback. He's just not Hooker accuracy wise going downfield. I said, so you in this situation with Milton as opposed to Hooker, where heck, it's 3rd and 10, and you're like, I don't know that it matters, because he's just so accurate, and there's so much he could do. 3rd and more than 7 with a guy like Milton, forcing him to go down the field and be accurate with the football. I think that's important, and getting them off schedule is don't let the running backs start.
Jeez. We're going to try this again. We're going to try this again. We're going to make it happen, JC. It might be on my end. Who knows? Oh, let me refresh on my end. Okay, I just refreshed on my end, so hopefully we just cleared up.
Yeah, I looked at. I'm sitting pretty here with.
Shoot.
So I don't know. All right, so don't let their running backs just start galloping all over you either. I mean, that's the thing. You got to, they're 3D.
Jeez.
I don't know what's going
on. We're going to push through this, JC. We will not let this adversity win.
All right, so stop the run, basically. Yeah, stop the run. Get them in off schedules. Get them in 3rd and more than 7. Second, passing downs where he's got to make an accurate throw down the field to get you. That's kind of that's what I mean by getting them off schedule.
And it really starts with them with the rushing attack. Like if you look at their offense, people think it's Josh Heupel, throw the football 50 times, but they love to run the football, and they've got a 3-headed monster in the backfield. How do you expect South Carolina, JC, to attack this? Because I would say, with Joe Milton's, the uncertainty of him, right? He's not Hendon Hooker. Hasn't been bad this year if you look at the numbers, but he's just not Hendon Hooker. But, I'm almost hesitant to say sell out on the run because I look at what happened with the secondary last weekend. Does that give you any great concern? Do you think that was a blip on the radar? Do you feel like there's a way South Carolina, again, we expect points in this game, but do you feel like there's a way South Carolina can find some more defensive success than maybe what we saw even last weekend?
Yeah, you can't let them run all over you, and that's the deal. But you almost, do you play them like you played them last year? Which last year they left South Carolina, let its DBs just go play, and they did a great job winning one-on-one battles. Are you ready to do that this year with O'Donnell and Marcellus and those guys? One thing I think they do have to avoid, Chris, is you can't ask DQ Smith to cover like Griffin from Mississippi State last week. That's just a mismatch. That's not DQ's game. He's not a man coverage against one of the fastest guys in the SEC type of guy. So you have to avoid those matchups. And what I found this year with Carolina's defense is opposing offensive coordinators are doing a good job of picking out the mismatches and getting them into those one-on-one situations. So I think if you're Clayton White, the challenge is don't let those guys get into those situations. You got to help your players out a little bit there. I don't know. I think Tennessee's offensive line has been not as good this year. So if Boogie Huntley, TJ Sanders, and Tonka Hemingway are, having good games up front, and the linebacker Debo Williams and Stone Blanton are playing well in the box, maybe you don't, you don't bring an extra guy or whatever. They kind of sit back and play coverage. But if not, and you need help stopping the run, you're going to have to put Dial and Fortune on islands, unfortunately, and take your chances.
Now, JC, when you look at this game, the overall outlook, going beyond the field, one of the things, admittedly, that concerns me this time last week, I was talking about all the reasons why in a 50-50. Well, we're going to get through, JC. Anyways, I was talking this time last week in a 50-50 game, all the reasons why I felt confident because of South Carolina being the home team under the lights at Williams-Brice Stadium, that home field advantage. Now the Gamecocks have that going against them. And with all due respect, with all due respect to Sanford Stadium, this environment is going to be something different South Carolina has not played in this season. Does that give you any worry or angst going into this one because of the environment, some youngsters on the offensive line? It feels like a challenge the Gamecocks have not faced yet to this point. And in a lot of these 50-50 SEC games, a hostile home atmosphere, it can be the difference.
Definitely. And Neyland Stadium gets loud, really loud when they're winning or pregame, whatever. When they start to lose, it's very quiet, but not like anywhere. But and their fans, they remember what happened last year. So do their coaches, so do their players. It's a night game, so obviously there's festivities that will take place at the beginning of the day. So, yeah, they're going to be ready. I do think it's advantageous to South Carolina that they've
Sorry, JC.
It's advantageous to South Carolina that they have been to Georgia. They did go down to Stanford and, that stadium. So they played in that environment before. You had a big environment in Charlotte to open the season, even though it was a pro Gamecock crowd. You've had two big environments in Columbia. Communication is going to be the key. That's the one thing you worry about. But I don't worry about this team meeting the moment and them kind of going, oh, crap. There's 100,000 people here. Wow. Because they played just about every game this year has been in a pretty big time environment. So,
JC, final thing before I get you out of here. Again, I do apologize for the technical issues. Do you have a score prediction? How are you feeling about this one? Again, Gamecocks are a double-digit point underdog. Do you see them going into Neyland and making it 2 in a row against the Vols?
I mean, this series, man, since 2010, it's 3 for the Gamecocks, 3 for the Vols, 3 for the Gamecocks, 3 for the Vols. I'll have to go with the Gamecocks. It will be unprecedented. Gamecocks have never scored more than 24 points in Knoxville ever. Their wins up there have been 16-15, 14-3, and 15-9. But I think the Gamecocks will get the passing game going. If you're Spencer Rattler, this is the type of game you live for. Same with Leggett. I think the offensive line has gotten better, and is good enough to go in there and win the game. Maybe a barn burner, maybe Mitch Jeter kicking a field goal late, but I think Gamecocks win 38-35, bring it back and get the second. This is their streak now. Then they'll win at Columbia again. I guess when they play in 2025 because they're not on the schedule next year. And then there'll be time for Tennessee to win 3 in a row. So there you go.
There it is. It would be a huge win over the Vols, no doubt. JC, appreciate you taking the time. Thank you for being patient through whatever Tennessee hackers we dealt with today. But always a pleasure, my man. I appreciate you.
Hey, thanks so much, Chris. Thanks all y'all, and I appreciate it. See you next week.
Yeah, man. We'll talk soon. Great stuff from JC Shurburtt of Inside the Gamecocks of the Big Spur. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break on the other side, though. We keep the convo rolling and get back into the show. We've still got lots to get into here on this Wednesday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Muscle Dougie Ho.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, we are back here on this Wednesday, September the 27th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Apologies for the technical issues there with JC Shurburtt. I have no idea what was happening. The volunteer hackers, Dabo Sweeney hackers, Muschamp hackers have no idea. Have no clue what was going on. But either way, we got it in. Appreciate the patience with JC and appreciate you guys for tuning in and your patience during the combo as well. Really quickly, before we keep it moving, our guy Bollinger in the Big Cock Club Discord says, do you think we'll see Dontavius Braswell break onto the scene as a change of pace guy this week? Do you foresee a few touches in his near future or the need for him this week? Bollinger, great question. I don't see him being used. It's hard for me to imagine a situation in which they utilized Dontavius Braswell when they did not utilize him against Mississippi State. I'd like to be wrong because I think he is a good up-and-coming player and can be an impact player for South Carolina. But I don't think out of the blue you're going to see Dontavius Braswell touch the football because I think the Kerryon Joyner is still going to be involved. I'd be surprised if DK was not still the RB2 for this football team. Now, again, we will see. Who knows what decisions they make in regards in terms to personnel, if you will. But I would not expect to see Dontavius Braswell this weekend. So maybe we'll be wrong. Maybe we'll be surprised either way. Excited to see what type of career he has at South Carolina. Either way, guys, we keep the conversation rolling. My 3 key matchups for Saturday's game as the Gamecocks take on the Tennessee Volunteers under the lights at Neyland Stadium. And we start Gamecocks defensive back Nick Eamon-Warry against Tennessee quarterback Joe Milton. And yes, a lot of this game is going to come down to quarterback play, the duo in the battle between Spencer Rattler and Joe Milton. And Joe Milton, make no mistake, he is no Hendon Hooker, right? And anybody who expected him to be so, I think, was missing the mark. But he's not Hendon Hooker. He hasn't had quite that accuracy level, but still been a pretty good quarterback. And the reason I list Nick Eamon-Warry here, guys, the reason I list Nick Eamon-Warry is this. You look at last week against Mississippi State. A lot of the reasons for those problems in coverage, we talked about DQ Smith and how, he had a really, really tough time against Tulu Griffin of MSU. But a lot of that had to do with Nick Eamon-Warry and the communication or lack thereof, biting on the run, not being back there, giving safety help, dealing with his hamstring injury, being 90%. And Mississippi State went right at him. And if Nick Eamon-Warry is not 100% yet again, because you can imagine they're going to go right at him again. And so if Nick Eamon-Warry is not on point, right, is not reading the offense, not reading the eyes of Joe Milton, not giving that safety help, they're going to try to utilize Joe Milton's arm strength. I know we're tired of hearing about it. We heard about it all offseason. Guy can throw a football 90 yards. It's like, who really cares? Can he throw the changeup? Can he hit a guy in the chest? Can he throw a post? Can he throw a cross? Can he throw a slant? Can he throw a dig? Whatever. And Joe Milton has been hit or miss. So it's about avoiding when Tennessee inevitably does try for the deep ball, not allowing them to find success in it. That's the big thing, guys. That's the big thing for the Gamecocks. And it all starts with a Nick Eamon-Warry back there. He is the leader of the defense. He is the quarterback of the defense, you could almost say, the secondary for sure. And so being on the same page in regards to your communication, making sure that, you're squared away, you got everything figured out you need to, because we all saw last week. It was ugly. It was abysmal. I'm excited to see it. Also, by the way, guys, Nick Eamon-Warry coming down, stopping and run coverage, but specifically for this matchup, Nick Eamon-Warry against Joe Milton. Joe Milton, a guy with that arm strength, he absolutely can burn you with that deep ball, and you cannot have any of the mistakes, whether they be physical, whether they be mental. You cannot have those same mistakes that you had against Mississippi State linger into this one, because Joe Milton, for everything he's not Hendon Hooker, he will make you pay on the deep ball if you don't have things figured out in the back end of your defense. My second key matchup in this football game. We talked about this yesterday, guys. What is the one thing that can get Spencer Rattler out of his flow, out of his rhythm, and knock him off his game? That is an elite pass rush. And a pass rush that is relentlessly getting in his face over and over and over again. And heck, even that didn't have much effect in week 1 when North Carolina was all over him. He still had a great game. So defenses right now, they don't know what to do. But it's somewhat of a rule of thumb. You keep hitting on a quarterback, at some point, he's going to make a mistake. At some point, he's going to get gunshot. At some point, he's going to force the issue and throw the ball into coverage. And South Carolina, guys, we talked about it before when they made the change. Hey, go with the younger guys. Go with the talented freshmen on the offensive line. But playing multiple freshmen on the offensive line is not a recipe to win and win big in the SEC. Big Tree Babalade against Tyler Barron, the top pass rusher for the Volunteers. A huge matchup in this football game. Guys, you look at what Big Tree has done thus far, and I think we'd all agree he is a star in the making, right? He is going to be a mainstay on this Gamecocks offensive line for many, many, many years to come. But he faces his greatest challenge yet, right? Going into Neyland Stadium at night, going to be tough to communicate with the crowd and the noise. You look at Tyler Barron. They got many, many good ones up front, but Tyler Barron, 11 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, and 4 sacks on this season. Also leads their team in quarterback hurries with 3. Barron has been very good for them. 6'5", 260 is your prototypical build off the edge. And this is a big game for Barron as well because, against better competition, Florida had just 3 tackles in that ball game. No sacks, no tackles for loss. 2 of his sacks and 2.5 of his tackles for loss came against Virginia. But still, a veteran player as a senior out of Knoxville, Tennessee, right? He's a Tennessee kid. That's going to be a major matchup to watch off of the edge because, again, Spencer Rattler's in his own right now. That the only thing I think that could truly knock him out of it is an immense pass rush. And Big Tree Babalade has been tasked with protecting Spencer Rattler's blind side. Tennessee, a team that loves to get after the quarterback. They've had great success in getting after the quarterback. That'll be priority number 1 for them on the defensive side. Big Tree Babalade has to hold his own and really flourish in this football game for South Carolina to operate effectively on the offensive side. And guys, my final key matchup, Shane Beamer against Josh Heupel. Now, this is a fun one. We've learned over the last couple of months that these two guys don't like each other all that much, especially Josh Heupel. Not a fan of Shane Beamer. Multiple Tennessee guys said at SEC Media Days, if there's one coach on this schedule that Josh Heupel wants to beat, it's Shane Beamer. And I don't know if it has anything to do with other than the on-field results last year or what have you, but this is a big game for both coaches. I mean, this is a massive game for both of these coaches and these programs. But you think about these coaches, 1-1 against each other. Tennessee wins in blowout fashion in 2021. Carolina wins in blowout fashion in 2022. South Carolina playing the role of spoiler last year, crushing Tennessee's college football playoff hopes in a magical night at Willie B. Josh Heupel, still a head coach that is considered above Shane Beamer because of his experience, because of the level of success at Tennessee in such a short amount of time, and because of his offensive brand of football. Shane Beamer, on the other hand, an up-and-comer, just his 3rd year overall as a head coach, and is still, I think, laying the groundwork and building his brand of who he is and how his football teams operate. Again, to call this a massive game for both of these head coaches is an understatement. Both have their own reasons or both have their own methods of motivation. You know what it's going to be on the Tennessee side, guys. The revenge factor. The revenge. Look what they did last year. Revenge, revenge, revenge. We got to get revenge. We got to beat them by 50. On the South Carolina side, it's, hey, guys, a win over Tennessee last year sparked our season in a positive trajectory. Win over Tennessee this year can do the same. The pressures that Josh Heupel is feeling, proving that he's the guy to get Tennessee football back to the mountaintop in the SEC. And Shane Beamer on the South Carolina side to say, it's the Gamecocks time once again. Similar to back in 2010, 11, 12, and 13. How each of these coaches game plan, Josh Heupel and his offensive attack, defensive aggressiveness, then, of course, South Carolina with Spencer Rattler and Clayton White trying to figure out a plan, and, of course, Beamer ball as well. This is going to be a really fun matchup. 2 coaches who desperately need the W for their own resumes and each of their respective programs needing this one as well to reaffirm their positive trajectories respectively and continue to move their way up the SEC East ladder. Guys, that being said, we're going to jump into one final break. On the other side, we'll do our drive around the SEC, look at this weekend's games, and I'll give my brief thoughts on each of the ball games this weekend in a packed slate of SEC games in Week 5. All that and more on the other side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also brought to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Consultants. Headaches, coughing, running nose while in the office or just in your home, call A1 Air Quality Consultants to have your air checked today. From Columbia to Asheville, Anderson to Charlotte, they are your breath of fresh air for all of your air quality needs. Be sure to give them a call or shoot them a text today at 864-619-2092. That's 864-619-2092. You can also contact them via email at a1airqualityconsultants@gmail.com. Be sure to check them out. We thank A1 Air Quality Consultants for their love and support of the Spurs Up Show, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya.
Watch your Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Wednesday, September the 27th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. That being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it. This will end our show today. The drive around the SEC, Week 5, and, guys, a packed slate of Week 5 games. And I've heard some others say this as well, but, normally we save the phrase separation Saturday until, a couple of weeks or, into the month of October, early November. We save it for down the road. When we talk about SEC power rankings and the hierarchy of the SEC, and this team's the third best, this team's the seventh best, this team's the ninth best. And right now it just feels like a jumbled mess, right? Like we don't really know where these teams rank, where they should rank. We don't know much about some of these teams. Some of these teams haven't even played an SEC game yet, believe it or not. We're going to start to learn a lot more. And this feels like a Separation Saturday Part 1 in the SEC. We start in Lexington, Kentucky, hosting the Florida Gators. And guys, immediately, this is what I'm talking about. Because on one hand, you have Kentucky with Devin Leary and the array of weapons that he has, Berrien Brown, Dane Key, but we don't know what Kentucky is. Like they sort of just kind of just put it on cruise control and kind of just, glided through this season, haven't looked overly impressive, right? Even against Vanderbilt last week, there were some tense moments in non-conference play. They just kind of roll their helmets out there and sloppily win every single game. Florida, on the other hand, they have that big win over Tennessee, but outside of that, lost to Utah, beat McNeese, and then a very uninspiring win against Charlotte last week. So these are a pair of teams. And you think about the expectations for each in preseason. Number one, I think this is a huge advantage to Florida to be playing this game at noon Eastern time in Lexington. I know that Kentucky's not considered one of the most elite atmospheres in the SEC or anything, but Kroger Field can get rocking when it gets late, night games at that venue, etc. But you look at the expectations in preseason. Florida was a team, hey, just make a bowl game, right? Make a bowl game. That'll be a solid year for Billy Napier. Kentucky had real expectations of winning 8 or 9 games and maybe staking their claim as the second best team in the SEC East. This is a massive game for both of these. This is one of those trajectory-altering type of games, right? Like, which way does your season go? Which way does your season go? Are you headed towards that 8 or 9 win path or fighting to get to 6 or 7? That's what a game like this will tell us. And, for me, guys, again, it's about who's a contender, who's a pretender. Like Kentucky has just kind of skated through the front part of the season, their non-conference games in Vandy, and they haven't looked all that great doing it, haven't really lived up to any hyper expectation. And then Florida, can you build off of what you did against Tennessee 2 weeks ago and show that wasn't just a flash in the pan and that you're actually a team that maybe is ahead of schedule and a little bit better than we expected in year 2 of Billy Napier? We move to Arkansas and Texas A&M. This game, guys, of course, being played in Arlington at Jerry's World, a noon kick on SEC Network. The Hogs need this one bad, man. Hog Nation is down and out, really, truly. It reminds me a lot of last year when South Carolina was out on Marcus Satterfield, and it got to a point where it almost felt really, dare I say, toxic, and a feeling of just this discontent and this unsettledness in the fan base, if you will. This is a massive game for the Hogs and Sam Pittman, and just having something to feel good about. Texas A&M has dominated this series. Some really weird results, weird games, but they've absolutely dominated in Arlington. Of course, now we know no Connor Wegman in this football game. Max Johnson will take over as the Aggies starting quarterback. How does that affect them? I don't think Texas A&M, guys, is going to take that much of a step back offensively because Max Johnson, a guy who's been in the fires, he's done this before. He's not some true freshman. And you saw what he could do last week against Auburn. So for Arkansas, can KJ Jefferson keep up his elite level of play? Can they get Rocket Sanders going? I believe he is going to be available this weekend. Arkansas's defense has been okay, not great, but this has got to be a desperate Hogs team, man. Back-to-back losses to BYU and, of course, that tough one at LSU. And, with every loss, the pressure mounts. I mean, Sam Pittman talking about he deleted social media and, that things are bad when that is the case. The Hogs desperately need this one to right the ship. And for Texas A&M, obviously, walking that tightrope, it's an important game for Jimbo Fisher, Bobby Petrino as well. We go to the Plains, Auburn hosting the Georgia Bulldogs. Is there any remote chance in a 3:30 kickoff on CBS that Auburn can pull off this upset? I say no. I just don't know, guys, how Auburn's going to move the football on Georgia. I don't see it. I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know how Auburn is effectively going to do anything offensively to make Georgia sweat. And I'm still one, guys, that I'm not buying the hype that Georgia's no good this year. The schedule's worked out perfectly for what Georgia is right now. Just kind of getting things rolling, kind of building up to this moment. Carson Beck, Mike Bobo, that offense on the road. Weird things happen at Jordan-Hare. We get that. But, this is about Georgia as 2 touchdown favorites. They finally able to get it rolling. Are they able to, with that running game, get that running game into gear? And does Georgia get healthier with the return of guys like Ladd McConkey? And, I think could Auburn maybe make this game sideways for a moment? Maybe, because, again, Jordan-Hare is a weird place to play. But I just don't see how Auburn has the horses in this one to keep up. But, hey, you also have the factor of Hugh Freeze. He'd love nothing more than to spoil Georgia's season, and he is playing with house money right now. Always dangerous, always scary when you have that. But the number 1 Bulldogs, favored as they should be. Missouri heads to Nashville to take on the Vanderbilt Commodores, 4 o'clock kick on SEC Network. This is a sneaky game right here. Missouri better not mess around. You're sitting 4-0, got a top 25 win. Everybody like me is saying, you know what? Time to give Eli Drinkwitz and Mizzou the benefit of the doubt. But you got LSU next weekend. That's the one. You could be 5-0, maybe College game day, maybe, all the hype and hoopla buzz around that one. Don't mess up and be in that thought process if you're the Mizzou football team. Vandy's not very good, but we saw them last year against Kentucky and Florida and show up and win games they weren't supposed to, win games they had less talent, but they won the games anyways. And if you're looking past this Vanderbilt football team, they can sneak up and they can bite you. Mizzou's the favorite. They're supposed to win. They're expected to win. Vanderbilt's got to get more out of A.J. Swan and all their they got to get more, period. Vandy has not been very good this year. But I'll be keeping an extra close eye on this one. Mizzou might win by 50. But do not let Vandy hang around in this one. Things can get really weird in Nashville. Ole Miss taking on LSU, 6 o'clock kick on ESPN. Guys, this is one of those games. When we were back at SEC Media Days and we were talking SEC football over the summer, this is one of those games that we were so excited about because we knew there was going to be a number of games on a week-in, week-out basis where it was truly, you felt like a coin flip. And this one's the definition of a coin flip, right? LSU, a 3-point favorite. Ole Miss at home in Oxford. I mean, Lane Kiffin's got to win one of these big games at some point, right? On the other side, I mean, LSU guys is chasing an SEC West title. They can't afford to have a slip-up. Can't afford it. I think this is going to be a lot of fun to watch the quarterback battle of Jaden Daniels, Jackson Dart. I think that LSU's defensive line going up against Ole Miss is a huge matchup to watch in this football game. Ole Miss has not been able to push around anybody. They've really struggled to get Quinshon Judkins going. They're going to need him in that running game. But LSU, of course, with Mason Smith and Mekhi Wingo and Harold Perkins in that front seven, going to be really, really tough. This one's going to be fun, though. I think weird things are going to happen in Oxford, and this is a must-win for both sides. One of those 50-50 games that I cannot wait to take in. Of course, guys, Carolina, Tennessee, we're breaking that down all week. That brings us to the final SEC game. And don't you just love this, guys? You look at the Week 5 slate, it's not a single non-conference game. It's all conference matchups. Conference teams on conference teams. That's exactly how we like it. Alabama travels to Starkville to take on Mississippi State, a 9 p.m. Eastern kickoff on ESPN. Guys, has Mississippi State figured something out offensively? Kevin Barbay, Will Rogers, that downfield passing attack. Obviously, you have Woody Marks, and you feel like he's still going to be a weapon you can use in the running game. But here comes Alabama. Are they figuring things out with Jalen Milroe and dominating on the line of scrimmage and, kind of getting some things rolling with their running game and physicality and getting back on track? This is a sneaky game right here. If you're Alabama, it's a sneaky game. Because if Will Rogers is on point, hey, all bets are off. If I'm Kevin Barbay and company, I'm going right back to the well. I'm letting Will Rogers throw the football early and often in this game. Keep me in the game. You lose by 21, 28, so be it. But he's your best bet. And the fact of the matter is this. Mississippi State has the better quarterback in the game. How much does that mean? We'll see. But this one has the potential to be a lot of fun late on Saturday night. Guys, that being said, that's going to do it for our drive around the SEC, and that's going to do it all for me. Thank you all so much for tuning in, guys. Again, be sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube, hit that bell icon so you get notifications of when we go live, when we drop new video content as well. Also, be sure to subscribe via iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast. We drop those daily every single day. Final thing before we get out of here, Bollinger says, in the Big Cock Club Discord, got a better question. Do you believe that we can mimic Florida's game plan of forcing Milton to beat us in the air? Can the secondary bounce back? And how do you think Milton's injury plays in our favor? I think Milton's injury is kind of a non-factor. I think he's fine. May limit his running ability a little bit, but I don't think it plays much of a factor in the game, if any at all. Can the secondary bounce back? Yes. Will they? We shall see. A lot to fix in a short amount of time. And then can you mimic Florida's game plan of forcing Milton to beat South Carolina through the air? I think so, but, then again, you're in a position where do you want to subject your secondary to, trying to cover Tennessee's receivers one-on-one and giving them some favorable matchups and letting Josh Heupel dial it up and cook it up and let Joe Milton go deep. It's you got to stop the run, though. To your point, you have to slow down the run. You have to put the game on Joe Milton because if it's a matchup of Spencer Rattler versus Joe Milton, I think you like the odds in that one if you're a Gamecock fan. Guys, that's a great place to end it. Appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.